Story 1. Had a coworker come to the house. Drinks and smoked and all that good stuff. Then after everyone cleared out and it was just him and me, he got really weird and gave me a hug and whispered in my ear, "I hope this doesn't change anything, man, but I need to let you know that I've killed 2 people." I thought he was messing around, and when he left, I decided to search the name up. Sure enough, the dude had gotten out of prison just 3 years prior on murder charges. We're still cool to this day, and it seems like he's turned his life around and has become a pretty decent family man. But that night he told me that just sticks with me. Story 2. A supervisor in my department at work pulled me aside, told me they would deny it if anyone asked, then told me that a coworker of mine was secretly filming me at work. She said she was told not to tell me, but thought I deserved to know. Story 3. My grandfather's sister was gang raped when she was a teenager. She never reported it because she was taking a shortcut and should have known better than to walk through that area alone. She told me this when she was 75, having kept the secret for almost 60 years. Edit. Fixed my math. Story 4. I'm in the Navy. One day, after a port visit that will remain unnamed, a coworker of mine asked me, "Hey man, do you think I'm in trouble?" He then proceeded to tell me how he committed date rape when he found a girl passed out drunk and had sex with her. I told him, yeah, I do. And before I could even tell the right people, Naval Criminal Investigative Service was magically on board the ship and took him back to the States. Story 5. When I was 19, a guy I knew confessed to me one night after a party that he had been seriously sexually abused over a prolonged period as a young teenager. I was stunned and full of sympathy. He was so outgoing and self-assured, even as a kid. I had no idea he was living through something so traumatic and distressing all the time I knew him. Story 6. My coworker confessed that she had been secretly feeding her husband's allergic cat chocolate when he wasn't home because she wanted it to naturally pass away so they could get a dog instead. I reported her to our mutual friend who lived with them. The cat is safe now, thank God. Story 7. This girl in high school bragged about how she got her boss fired by stealing her phone and going to the bathroom and setting up the phone like someone was taking a picture over the bathroom stall. She set a timer and went into the stall and pretended to be going to the bathroom while the phone took the picture. Then she put the phone back and immediately reported to the store that her boss had taken a picture of her over the stall going to the bathroom. They confronted the boss and asked to see her phone, firing her boss on the spot. Poor woman. Story 8. I worked in the bar industry for 3 years, and I've had several people share horrifying drunk confessions. You have to take them with a grain of salt because people lie all the time, especially at bars. But one confession really sticks with me. A man told a long and detailed story about being forced to murder his cousin. They were both members of a gang, and the cousin had stolen some money. The man, who was in his late 40s at the time of telling me this story, was still clearly haunted by it. He had been a teenager at the time, and the cousin he murdered had always looked out for him and protected him. It sounded like he was his male role model or father figure. I still think about the night I had that conversation fairly frequently. I've never heard pain and grief expressed quite that way. It was really heart-wrenching. Story 9. I think I have a pretty bad one. A guy I went to school with worked on a farm at the time. One late-night conversation, and he started telling me about his relations with one of the horses. I never spoke to him again. I don't know anything about him now, and for that, I'm very thankful. Story 10. Had a bar patron confess he liked the taste of human flesh and confessed he had been experimenting with his child's mother about it. Showed up with his child's mother to the bar sometime later, and she did have human teeth marks on her arm and a bandage. I did not ask about the bandage. Story 11. This one comes to mind as it is the most shocking thing someone has confessed to me in confidence. I interviewed someone many years ago to be a department manager. Solid guy, really knew his stuff. Hired him, and he was great with staff, knew how to work with clients. He grasped all the nuances of the job, including the boring administrative stuff that we all dislike, but he was spot on with it. There was another employee there with whom he had a great rapport. She wasn't his direct report, but she and he seemed to get along just super well. Chemistry as if they knew each other for years. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing beyond just being able to effectively work interdepartmentally, And when they worked on projects together, they were on task, focused, and delivered. Now, this guy had pretty good chemistry with everyone else as well, but this one female, it was just like they were in sync. He had been with me for about 2 months. He was in my office one day, we were having lunch and just chatting about all topics not work-related. The subject of family came up from him, not me. I told him my story is short. No kids, almost all family is dead. So I don't have anyone really anymore except me and my spouse. He smiled and nodded in what I would say is a kindly, empathetic way. At this point, he told me he had a large family and extended family and started to give a small history lesson. This guy has a lot of family. A lot. As he's going down the list, he starts rattling off names. And one of them is the female I mentioned above. I found out she's his great niece. Well, that explains how and why they gel so well when they work. Their family. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we have no problems with family members or relatives working for us. Not an issue. As he concludes his conversation, he says to me, "You knew, right?" I said, "No, I had no idea you two were related, but it makes sense now." He looks at me, and he has a serious look on his face and says, "No, you know about us, right?" I looked confused, I assume, and said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "My youngest daughter. She's the mother." That took me about 45 to 60 seconds to fully process what he was telling me. I finally said something along the lines of nope, had no idea. Okay, great, this was fun, let's do this again soon. My best employee is related to another good employee, it's great uncle and great niece, and they've been together and have a kid. Oh, he was in his late 60s and she was in her very early 20s. I checked and checked, but we had no policy against such. He quit about a month later. She stuck around about another month and also quit. I strongly suspect it was due to him spilling the news to me, which to this day, I just don't understand why he shared what he did, beyond her being his great niece. In that moment, he just chose to share. I assume it was due to the great sushi we just had for lunch. Thus, that story takes the top spot in my book. Story 12. An ex-friend helped another friend commit suicide. She helped him get rid of his belongings, deliver the rest to his child's mother and 12-year-old son, write his suicide note, and take the last picture of him on his phone so his girlfriend could use it for his funeral. They were involved with each other using crystal meth and watching pornography, and she didn't care. She proudly told me at his funeral that she took that picture of him by his coffin. She ended up losing her children, home, partner, and the respect of all her friends. The most bizarre part of this whole story is that she was the perfect mother. The soccer mom, class mom, the mom that we all aspired to be. Story 13. A coworker I became friends with eventually confessed to me he was a drug dealer who grew a lot of marijuana, that he's rarely faithful, and has cheated on his fiancée at almost every opportunity. He also had a major cocaine habit, was a gambler, and his other side hustle was a long con on a company he used to work for. On the surface, he was charming, clever, and funny. Once he brought me in, as it were, I realized he was a complete sociopath. Last I heard, he was arrested for a road rage incident in his BMW. Story 14. Almost 40 years ago, I was out with a friend, and we stopped by one of her other friends' houses. This friend of a friend warned me to never eat at her house, as her little brother was prone to taking large bowel movements that clogged the toilet, and her parents would cut them up with their regular utensils and then just toss them in the dishwasher and back into daily use. I still think about that fairly often. Story 15. I have a cousin that has no shame and actually brags about how she cheats and how she's a homewrecker by messing around with married men. All her previous relationships she has cheated and would brag to everyone and laugh about how she hooked up with some guy while her boyfriend had no idea. She was actually engaged for a bit and did the same thing to him with multiple guys. She's actually proud of this. Story 16. My former roommate told me she had been stealing small amounts of money from her elderly grandmother's account for years. She justified it by saying, "Grandma has dementia and doesn't need it anyway." I moved out the next month and anonymously reported her to the bank. Story 17. A female friend in college got drunk and confessed that, between the ages of 12 and 16, she would sneak into her parents' room and borrow her mom's personal items. But she said, I cleaned them before and after I used them, so it was fine. Story 18. My friend's girlfriend told us in a drunken state that her oldest brother used to force her to perform oral sex on him and his friends after school when she was 6 and he was in 8th grade. She was adopted from Asia into a white family. I never met him and only knew her for a few years, but I hope karma came back to get him. That story really makes me angry. Story 19. I had an employee tell me about the time when he was 7 and some kids broke into his home. He woke up, went downstairs, and discovered one of the teenagers trying to assault his mom. So he took a knife and stabbed the kid to death. The perpetrator was 14. Story 20. When I was in elementary school, 3rd grade or 4th, I was friends with a girl in my class who also lived in my neighborhood. One day when we were playing together in the yard, she said she had an imaginary friend that would come into her room and have sex with her every day. I stopped hanging out with her because it scared me. I wish I had told someone. Story 21. Too long. Didn't read. Best friend's dad planned to murder-suicide his family, but only got himself. My best friend's dad died by suicide about 20 years ago after his wife left him. I wasn't there when the police found and removed the body, but I did help clean up the crime scene because nobody tells you that you're responsible for that, and crime scene cleanup crews are expensive. I also helped prepare the house for sale. My friend and his family went through therapy for a while, and then they moved across the country to be closer to his mom's friends, but we kept in touch. A few years ago, they temporarily moved back into the area before settling in a neighboring state, and I helped them with the move. My friend hadn't arrived yet, so it was just me helping, basically a second mom, and when we stopped for lunch, she told me everything. Her ex-husband had been extremely abusive but was really good at hiding it, so it took her over a decade to get out. The dad had bought a shotgun, updated the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy, and took out policies on mom and all 3 of their kids, naming the aunt as beneficiary on all policies. He died by suicide a couple of weeks later. We think he had a last-minute change of heart about killing his kids, but we'll never know. They're all grown, some with families of their own, and they are quite happy as they are, so I don't think it will do any good to tell any of them, and I have no intention of doing so. Their mom can if she wants. Story 22. My best friend committed suicide in 2023. We were all only 15. I was on the phone when our other friends found him, but a few months later, one of them confessed he had taken a picture of his body and shown it to mutual friends. Messed up stuff, man. The person took his phone from the scene and finished off the bottle of vodka he had been drinking. It's safe to say we don't speak anymore. Story 23. Mine isn't really that messed up, so I guess I should consider myself lucky. One of my first girlfriends confessed that she never completed any schooling. She was homeschooled all her life and was even a part of the graduation festivities for my high school graduating class. She was very fun and personable. One day she said she had something to confess and revealed her mom simply filled out all the paperwork and just copied test answers and mailed them in. I'm not sure how it all works, but she said she never studied anything or took a real lesson. I still really liked her, but the more I got to know her, the lack of basic knowledge started becoming more and more apparent. Her math and science understanding was that of a small child. It was sad. Every once in a while, she'd say something so foolish it would catch me off guard and have me rethinking my life. Story 24. That he was raped. He denied he was raped, but what else do you call being drugged? Then waking up with your pants pulled down and your body sticky and wet from being taken advantage of? I said, dude, you were raped. It's okay, we can talk to the counselor at school. They're there for this kind of stuff. That idea went over like a lead balloon. Story 25. Helped a coworker move, met his wife and 2 daughters, had an amazing time. About a week later, he and I were sitting at a pre-shift meeting, and he leaned over and told me he and one of the hostesses, who was in her early 20s and he in his late 30s, were exchanging inappropriate pictures until around 2 in the morning the previous night. I know other situations can be worse, but I was outright disgusted by him in that moment and still am. His wife was sweet as pie, bought us pizza, and always came to help set decorations at our job. Just gross. Story 26. Coworker telling me he had sex with, raped, a 14-year-old girl when he was in his mid-20s. Another coworker talking casually about dogfighting. These were both at my first job working at a restaurant. Story 27. When I was in undergraduate school, I played on a club sports team for one season. A core group of players lived in a communal house and had a big end-of-the-season party. I stopped by with some friends for drinks, but left early. I liked playing, but I didn't know them all that well. The next week, I ran into one of them in one of the cafeterias. He was telling me about the party and how I should have stuck around. Then he pointed out a freshman girl who was sitting at one of the tables and said, "She got very drunk, and a bunch of us took advantage of her. I thought I was going to get sick." I don't remember what I said, but I left. I did tell a bunch of my friends. We smoked a lot, drank a lot, and pursued many women, but that was not our mentality. They were as upset as I was, and I never went back or hung out with the team again. The most disturbing thing was not that they did it. He wasn't confessing to me, he was bragging. He was sick. But the most disturbing thing was I did nothing about it. I didn't go to the police, I didn't try to get her help. I just walked away from the situation. And that's troubling. I should have done something, anything. Instead, I just took the coward's way out.